Well, hi everyone again. Welcome to what I call Coffee with Craig. These are spontaneous live sessions that I do with you, and I'll sometimes make psychic predictions. But most of my talks today are going to be my thoughts in many respects about what I feel's ahead in the world. Sometimes this is me thinking out loud and working with you also with your thoughts and ideas. So, it's not all psychic, but occasionally, I give what I think, things that have come to me, things that I've done in other psychic predictions on the pages and things like this, and bring it together. And we can perhaps just have a chat about topical events and anything that you think is interesting that you'd like to talk about, because there's so much going on in the world, but there's so many other kind of spiritual questions we could ask as well. So I always kind of try to seed these first of all with my patrons. So I've got a few questions ahead of this. I'm just going to put my thoughts to. So thanks to some of the patrons already who have patrons of the people you can see in the description below who subscribe to the patron pages and give a little bit each month to help keep this site going. So the first one came in from Caroline, and she said, what did she say? Hang on just a minute. Why she put that? Sorry, just a second. This is because I'm working on my own. But basically was asking about the people in Ukraine, in being held up in Mariupol. Where are we? Okay, but what's going to happen now with the bombing and things that are going on in Ukraine? Because Putin has put a corridor through recently to try to let out some of the people that are held up there. And my thoughts about this are that what's going to happen there is they let some of the civilians out, which has already happened, and then they're just going to bomb it flat. They're just going to bomb it flat. And that it's like, you've had your chance to get out of here. And now we'll just bomb you. I don't think Putin will even send troops in, because you think about it, the Russian troops are beginning to get quite depressed by the idea that they're fighting here against what they could consider what used to be other Russians, part of the Soviet Union. It's like a civil war in some respects. And these guys are fighting for their country. I think it's pretty self-evident to anybody that must be fighting there that you're not gonna stop these guys easily. And these guys are fighting for something they really believe in. And do we still believe in this Putin man that sent us out on false pretenses, on maneuvers and so forth? So you don't send your troops in. What you do is easy to fire a gun from a distance and send in missiles and send in artillery. It's easy to fire artillery. You're not looking in the enemy's eyes. So this has always been his policy in places like Georgia and things like that. So I think that's what he's going to do. I think he'll just bomb Mariupol flat. Bomb it absolutely flat. And I think this is going to be in the news soon as something that's going to be one more of those things that we're all going to be thinking is absolutely horrible sort of thing to do. So those are some of my thoughts on that. I also had another patron asking, how do you see, I talked before, and so is Jane, but Putin will be removed eventually. Do you think that will be through illness, one of the patrons said, or do you think it will be through him being deposed? Well, I think it's going to be a bit of both. I think he is ill. I know there's been now quite a lot of press reports about that, but I was talking about this over a year ago, saying that I thought something was wrong with Putin physically. And I think something's wrong with him that's affecting his mental health. It could be steroids. Jane suggested it could be something like a brain tumor, but something there is making him not particularly logical in the way he goes on. Things very bad cases of gonorrhea and things can also create mental problems, but those are treatable nowadays. But who knows what's going on in that man's head? But I think ultimately he'll be deposed by his generals. I think there's going to be a coup against him, particularly if he begins to really seriously lose this war in Ukraine. Now, how will the Ukraine war end? I don't see it ending very suddenly. I don't see some sudden agreement. I think this is going to grind on. Personally, I feel that it's going to be a long, drawn-out contest, and just like Afghanistan, it's going to turn to kind of like a guerrilla war. And big armies can't fight a guerrilla war. Hit and run fighting, it usually results in that guerrilla type of technique working. So I see it dragging on there for the time being. So those are my first thoughts. I'm going to take some of your questions. So I don't have Domenico with me working with me today, so it's just me. So I've got to have a little look through and look at what you've asked, and we'll take on some of these, some of your questions here. Oh, well, that's interesting. This is another one from another one of our another one of our patrons. So thank you, Sheila. Hi, Craig. I'm very concerned about Russia's threats to the UK, particularly the nuclear tsunami attack. This is what Putin warned against. Also, do you think Putin will be deposed or removed due to ill health or opposition? Well, I kind of answered that because I saw that one earlier come up. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get a nuclear tsunami out of this by any means. Again, I've mentioned this a number of times, and I remember a long time ago asking about would there be future nuclear wars, and I've asked it many times to mediums that have been in trance, other mediums other than myself. So if a medium's guide has come through and given pretty good proof that that's not just their unconscious mind, but have already given some kind of what we call evidence, I then asked them, I've asked them similar times, will there be a nuclear war in the future? And at that time, I was told, no, that it will be small countries, and they, and particularly Peter Close, who the medium that taught me, who died recently, sadly, I heard, died at 98 years old. Good on him. But he in trance said to me, and this is going back in the 1980s, we're talking now, early 1980s. And he said, no, the problems in the future are going to be between countries like Iran and Iraq. There'll be a war there, which happened. An invasion of Iran and Iraq, and Iraq's happened. And he also talks about North Korea as being a serious problem for the world. But in his discussion with me, the guide that is, his guide was called Rama. Rama said that there would be no nuclear war. Because I asked all the questions about what I took prophecies of Nostradamus and seeded them to the mediums to see what would happen. So actually, Sheila, I don't think that we're going to get that. So I'm not worried. I know Putin has sent jets over the UK very often and buzzed our defence systems over and over again. And just up the road from me here in Salisbury, we had a chemical attack, didn't we, really, which is when we had all the rise-ins and the poisonings going on of opposition to Putin. But I don't think that'll happen, even on the battlefield with mini nuclear attacks. I don't see that happening. But I do see huge bombardments. Lots of good mornings and hellos, but I won't put all those up, guys. I'm just looking for your questions, so keep it to your questions. Oh, that's an interesting one there, actually, because Belladonna's Art of Healing says, do you see food shortages? And this is something I've been talking about early on. Again, last year, do you remember? I said that I see in 2022 we're going to have food shortages. That seems more evident now because Ukraine is a massive producer of grain. And that grain mainly goes to the third world. And so the third world will be the first to suffer, I'm sure, from this war in Ukraine, which in always the case, it's the poor that suffer the most. So it looks like that's going to happen. I mean, that you can tell that logically, but I was talking about that before. And I also talked about, you remember, if you look back on my predictions for 2022, I said about there'll be food shortages this year. I also said that the biggest worry is going to be inflation. And I see in the news today that the Bank of England is going to hike its rates here in the UK quite high. And same thing's happening in America. And of course, everywhere else is going to follow suit. You know, they always say America sneezes and Europe catches the cold. So we'll see the same thing happening in Europe. And then people haven't experienced inflation for quite some time. And particularly those of you who have mortgages that are tied in such, not tied in rather, whose mortgages fluctuate with the changes in interest rate, that can be quite a huge hit to some families, because you know you're expecting to pay a mortgage which you only can just manage, because everybody's been, haven't they? They've been pushed to the edge with all these these new buildings that they go into, which tie you up in mortgages that make it all easy to begin with and then hit you down the line. Now you're going to get the double whammy of interest rates. And I think this is going to cause very serious problems. In fact, when I go out to vote today here in the UK, I look at all the parties and I think I cannot vote for any of those parties. They are all driving me scatty with what they do. And this is me, Craig, not the psychic speaking. This is Craig the Craig speaking. I've decided to vote for the independent people. I found an independent person that has an agenda to stop the terrible building that's going on in my area. She'll get my vote. Okay. And I think we have to vote for policies, don't we? Well, not just for political parties, and be flexible, all of us, about what we do. Because to be honest, I think too many people are getting away with too much. And it's always the people at the bottom of the ladder that suffer the most. You know, it's looking pretty poor out there. And I worry a lot also for the future. I mean, don't you? About where are we going with our environment? How much do we see on the news now about the top horrors of the environment and what's happening, and how we're all letting the world fall to pieces again? You know, our attention's been taken by things like first North Korea, then by the war in Ukraine, and the rest. And that worries me. That worries me a lot, actually, that we're missing perhaps some of the most serious things. I had a few more in from the patrons. I just want to sort of read those, because there were some interesting ones that I was thinking about. Where was it gone? Bear with me, guys. Yeah, one about India, because I thought that was interesting. Because lovely to share a coffee and a question, says Prakash. My question is, Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, is visiting Europe. Why? Okay. Also, China is a big threat to India and is trying to nibble away territories in India. Will China raise its head to threaten India again? And I think that's an interesting question. I'll take that one off. Because this is again something that I was feeling that there's serious problems going to be in India later on. This next one is going to be Taiwan. After that, I feel there's going to be serious problems with India. These are going to be threats from China. I think Modi's coming to Europe because of his compromise, because he's been compromised over buying Russian military equipment. I think Modi's coming here in order possibly to consider a deal, perhaps not immediately, but a deal to have new weapons supplies for India from Europe. And I think France will be high on the agenda there. Britain possibly, but France seems, I feel, will get some big deals going there. And also to discuss the possibility of imports and exports of food. So that's where I see that going. Modi's quite a right-wing thinker, actually, in India in many ways, very pro Hinduism. And also pro the idea that India was the great country called Bharat in the past. And the original borders of India extended way into Afghanistan, into Iran, right down through Thailand and into what was Burma, and right the way down, or even right down to Indonesia. It was a huge, huge country in the past. And at the moment, China seems to be fighting away on the corners of it. In Assam, I think it was at the top. And there's Bhutan is also a place that's under threat, possibly from China in the future. And of course, in the north, very north of India, down through Tibet. And I think there will be ongoing conflicts there. But I think one day, I think India is going to flex its muscles and push back, and may even take areas, particularly to the north east of India, up through those areas. I feel India pushing forward along those and creating a buffer area with China. This is a way ahead, though, and I think there will be a serious conflict between India and China in the long term. But this is some years ahead, I want to say, and again, that will be closer to nuclear problems than ever, actually, but that's not for now. So I'm making talking about these predictions in 2022. I might even need to make a clip of this in the future of me warning you about this now. And just someone here coming in, Yi Li, is saying, I remember you said there would be a revolution in China. I'm really looking forward to this. And this is going to be the saving grace of the future of the world, I feel. I have said this a long time ago, and I still feel this very strong, because we had here some of the family of a great Chinese thinker called Sun Yat-sen. And the family came here to see if they could communicate with Sun Yat-sen, and it wasn't with me. It was Jane gave this reading, but you still pick up the energy, the vibes around, and I feel that the energy of Sun Yat-sen has been around both me and Jane a lot of the time, because we've been very interested in talking about the future and where things are going to go, and I feel that the philosophy of Sun Yat-sen, which the family member particularly wanted to promote. Jane helped them find a missing fortune, $17 million Jane found for them. And that money was all spent on trying to promote the teachings of this great man from the past. Look him up on Wikipedia if you've never heard about him before. Very, very interesting ideas on a potential democracy for China. And we're talking about a long, long time. This was a great-granddad. So a grandfather, not a great-grandfather, a grandfather. But anyway, so all this happened, and I really felt that there's going to be a revolution in China, that China's going to turn against this materialism. Often, don't we get it in the world? We only need to study history to talk, and they always talk in history. If you do, that's why I think people should study history. The idea that there's a pendulum swing. It goes one way, and you can pretty much predict it's going to go the other way, because China's gone into deep, deep materialism. Maoism was a form of materialism in a different sort of way, because it was materialistic in that it was, it didn't believe in a god and everything. It wiped away all the Taoist ideas and the Buddhist ideas in China. And now I think it's going to swing the other way. And I think, as particularly we got these lockdowns happening in China, and this is really hard for the people. We don't see it in the news at all, but it's big news there, and it's big news for the people of China. And it's going to cause social unrest, and it's going to cause troubles, and people are not going to trust you again when you've been locked up like this. And the authoritarian state, I feel, will start to be challenged. Now, in my original predictions, I said, and I don't know what I was seeing really, but I said I felt it would come from some unusual part of China. And I don't mean Hong Kong, because that's kind of what I see as a usual part of China. Probably not Shanghai. I felt it was somewhere kind of on the outer reaches I thought something like Mongolia or something like that, somewhere where you would least expect a revolution to start. And perhaps that would have to be the case, actually, for this to happen, because it has to happen out of the eyes of Big Brother, as it were. And I see also there's going to be huge changes of leadership in China soon. I think the current leadership of China is going to be changed, and we're going to see a new leader coming in there. And that new leader I worry about. And I think it's coming soon, because the new leader in China is going to be a very dangerous person. And this may trigger the attempt to take Taiwan in the coming years, maybe in the next 2 years. I think even sooner than that, actually. And when this does happen, that leader is going to make the whole world think, and make the Chinese people think. So I'm hoping, because that's what I feel, because I hope for it as well. So I hope my thoughts aren't getting in the way, but my feeling are that there will be a major change to the leadership in China, which will be bad at first, but we'll also see the people of China rise up. And I do feel that the teachings of Sun Yat-sen, who is admired greatly in Taiwan still, will eventually dominate Chinese politics. Okay, so that's some of my thoughts on what will happen there. I know I talk a lot about China because China is not in our news here so much, but it is the agenda behind so many things that are going on in the world. Interesting one. Is there any destruction from an asteroid in the future? I was looking at some of, not my Nadi people's, but one of the Nadi predictions that was made out there that is actually available on the web, about that there would be an asteroid that would not hit the Earth, but would go between the orbit of the moon and the Earth. Now, if a big asteroid did do that and such a near miss as that, it would cause pretty big destruction. I think we might get, I get a feeling we might get something like that in years to come, but I think it's a long way ahead. I don't think it's around the corner, probably not in my lifetime. But if anybody watching this in centuries to come on the old archives might say, Craig did mention that, and the Nadis mentioned that. So, but it won't cause worldwide, it won't cause the end of the world, but I do feel it would cause a lot of serious problems in its time. Although I see someone's here commenting, yeah, again, Yi Li, yes, you, interesting, you know. So you've, interesting, you've actually been imprisoned at home for 40 days. Actually, that's hard again, isn't it? Because the problem is you can't get Amazon deliveries there. You can't get your deliveries from all the supermarkets and so forth. And I know the people there are really pushed to the limit. So that's interesting to see that from your comments there. I'm very interested in what goes on in China, actually. Because I think that China could also, on the one hand, it could be the pariah for the world, but at the same time, it could be the hope for the world. I think there's many good Chinese people there that would love to see some of the old ways coming back, actually. You know, I mean, if you think about what China had with its ancient Taoism, you know, a beautiful kind of religion, but it's not, it's a philosophy, really. It's a way of life. The idea of the powers of nature, of finding harmony, of the balance of, you know, the active and passive, yin and yang, the idea of that we can simply keep still and become awake, you know, all the beautiful things that are particularly in the I Ching, and Lao's Tzu's work and Confucius's work, although Confucius was a bit political in his ways in his time. But the wonderful teachings that are in that could be the absolute savior of China. But now they just become tourist resorts. The temples are just tourist resorts. They're not really active living places where the Taoist enlightened teachers can help the world. But one day I think it will come around. So let's have another look and see if we've got any more interesting questions from you. I'll take one more now, I think. Okay, I'm going to take another one from Sheila, because Sheila's another one of our patrons, and I give patrons priority, but I also particularly like to talk to the patron because we can interact again afterwards in the forums and the patron pages. Sharavana Baba said, in your book, Be Happy. Buy my book, Be Happy. Here's your opportunity. I'm just gonna push one on you. Hold, where are we? There you go. My book, Be Happy. You can go and get it in Amazon. Thank you, Sheila, for mentioning that. He would be 2 more bouts of COVID. Do you think we are in one or coming out of it? When will the next one, Bill? He was quite accurate. He was, in fact. And I think we will. This is not the end of pandemics, unfortunately. My thoughts are that we're going to have other ones ahead. And it's not just me as a psychic saying that, but a lot of the people that are involved in these things have been saying it now too, that, you know, the world's had one experience, but, you know, there's the chance we can have more. But I get the feeling also that just as that's happening, you know, we've made quite a lot of advances already. And I think we might have more than two, even. We might have multiple ones as the time goes ahead, because, you know, we're very prone to these things. But I think also that we are advancing things very, very fast. One of the things I was saying earlier in the year is I felt that there would also be some cures, possibly ahead, for things such as diabetes, because obviously I'm concerned about that, because my grandson is a diabetic, type 1 diabetic, you know, which is very different to, there's not much you can do about that really. But some of the stem cell research that's going on out there is absolutely remarkable. And I was look the other day, and I thought, crikey, there's some huge advances actually happening on this now. And I think, although it won't be stem cells, I think that the whole trouble with the virus has put many more people around the world on high alert. So I think, although we will get more viruses, and we'll get more sudden lockdowns sometimes, I think we beat them very, very quickly now. And I'm seeing that happening in the future. So I think Sharavana was right. I don't know, we've got another wave of COVID itself to come. They are saying that there's a possibility that that could happen, because it's in so much of the population now. It's opportunities to mutate. And I think it tends to mutate if it gets into somebody who has no resistance to it, you know, hasn't had any form of earlier COVIDs, or might have a suppressed immune system for medical reasons. And it can mean you can get all of a sudden very heavy mutations, just like the common cold can be sometimes very mild, but sometimes a real rotten one can go around. So I think we've got more to come, but I think we will beat it more. I don't think we're going to have the same level of horror that we had when we saw people being buried en masse in Brazil, and buried and burnt on the streets in India, and you know, and what's going on now in China. I mean, it's very hard for us all to even take in the scale of what's happened, you know, to us all. But I think we will see gradually a ending of the awful problems that we had with this. I don't think it'll be quite the same. But all of these, as I say before, they're really all wake-up calls, aren't they, for us? We all really need to rethink about our world. You know, are we really going the right direction with things? It seems like every time we get a lesson, nobody takes any action from it. It seems to me like the political parties, they still seem to be going on in the same fast asleep way. I think Biden looks like he's fast asleep, of course. It makes me laugh when I see some of these Australian reports on him, but all of them are. You know, they're all fast asleep. We're all walking to disaster. You know, we see what we hear, warnings about the world's environment. We do nothing about it. We see wars going on. We see NATO being about to be dismantled, and then all being put back together again hastily, and everybody wanting to join. You know, we don't want just knee-jerk reactions. We need to be thinking about making bigger plans for the future, really, don't we? We need to be thinking ahead, not just in our lives, but for the lives of people that follow us. You know, like when we plant a tree, we don't enjoy the shade. It's the next generation that enjoy the shade. And that's a symbol, really. And it's the same, like I look at the building, particularly, it's the one thing that really nags me, you might have noticed. We see building going on that is built to last, what, I look at them and think, with 50 years' time, that'll be a slum, you know? And we're building on beautiful landscapes. And we should be building buildings of great beauty that can last for centuries to come, and people to look back at this age and say, God, what wonderful things they did in 2022. Just like we might look back at the beautiful buildings of Florence, or look back at the Forum of Rome, or look back at the great buildings of India and China and so on. You know, we can do that. Why do we have to build such rubbish? And it's the same thing with everything we're doing. We're building on all levels rubbish. We're looking for short-term commerce, short-termism in food production, short-termism in the environment particularly, but even in the politics, you know, they'll forget about it by the next election. No, it's rotten times, and I think we need to think ahead. We need to think much more about making everybody happy. We need to all be happy, don't we? We need to be happy, you know. And I think it's a time we started to think of what makes people happy, not just the material things. People are happy if they've got good experiences. People are very happy if they have a true spiritual insight. People are very happy when they got spiritual friends. People are very, very happy when they find that they don't have to rely on social media and television and sitting there like some passive zombie absorbing all the drool from your television set, and are out enjoying themselves in nature, for example, and with friends and interactions with people. All the simple things in life make us happy, don't they? So I think we all need to start to rethink our world very much, and then maybe we won't get such problems with places like Ukraine and all the other problems that are happening. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye to you all. Do remember, if you are new to this channel, do please subscribe, because if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get updates every time I go live, and hopefully be able to join me again on a coffee with Craig. Okay, thank you all very much for joining me. See you soon. Bye for now.